Hello, my name is Jennifer Brown. I'm a graduate student at the University of Minnesota, and I am part of a group that has been researching the health effects of tear gas exposure. Today, I'm going to discuss the history of tear gas development, how that history has shaped policy in the U.S. and led to disproportionate use on equal rights protesters. This year has seen almost unprecedented amounts of tear gas being used on social justice protesters around the country. This is concerning because the scientific evidence about the health effects of tear gas, especially the long-term effects, have not been well studied. To understand why tear gas use is a social justice problem as well as a scientific one, we have to go back to the 1920s in the wake of World War I. What emerges is a combination of access. We had stockpiles of chemical weapons, capitalism, graft, and propaganda, where science was twisted and tear gas was promoted based on faulty experiments. A racist U.S. general popularized tear gas for domestic use, and it is still being used exactly as he wanted it to be, to quell protests that might distort the status quo and threaten white power. This general's name was Amos Fries. He was endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan and was fond of using America First rhetoric in speeches. Fries was part of a division of the U.S. military responsible for the development and production of tear gas. At the end of World War I, the Geneva Protocol was signed, banning the use of such weapons in war. But now Fries is sitting on a pile of chemical weapons that he can't use in armed conflict. His department was going to be obsolete. So what did he do? He found another use for his product. Fries peddled tear gas to police departments, the National Guard, prisons, and private security firms. This was the first militarization of the police. Fries was smart. He worked with lawyers, publicists, and scientists to promote tear gas as the less lethal alternative to bullets, and it worked. Fries was not the only person to promote tear gas for personal gain. Thomas Ward was the FBI training expert on pepper spray. He endorsed its sale and use and actually made a promotional infomercial about it. Ward was the one who wrote the main FBI studies cited by law enforcement agencies to defend tear gas use. Obviously, there's a clear conflict of interest there. And in 1996, Ward pled guilty to a felony for accepting kickbacks from pepper spray manufacturers. Despite the Chemical Weapons Convention, which bans production and use of chemical weapons, tear gas is still used by domestic police forces because it is deemed a riot control agent. This is how tear gas came to be used on protesters in America. It wasn't an accident. Tear gas was sold to police and sold to the American public as the less lethal alternative. But those messages were propaganda designed to enrich individuals and were based on twisted and misrepresented science. We conduct a review of the scientific literature on the health and environmental effects of tear gas. In summary, there are very few studies on the long-term health effects of tear gas exposure, but many document lingering health effects, mainly breathing problems. Most of the studies are outdated and poorly controlled. They overwhelmingly use healthy white men, neglecting other populations and people with pre-existing conditions like asthma. The classification of tear gas provided by the EPA and CDC does not fit within the exception provided in the Chemical Weapons Convention, which explicitly requires the effects to dissipate after a short time. Studies on the environmental effects are similarly scarce and are further complicated by the fact that the exact chemicals used in tear gas are often undisclosed. Tear gas became a go-to tool for undermining acts of civil disobedience due to its psychological demoralizing effect and the physical pain it causes. It's been used throughout history to quell civil rights protests, exactly as General Fries wanted. On the left is an image of the bridge during the Bloody Sunday March from Selma to Montgomery in 1965, and on the right is one from Minneapolis this year. Turning civilians, usually protesters, into criminals is what tear gas was designed to do. This is a map of tear gas use as of July 2020. Tear gas is treated as a weapon, but police-grade products fall between regulatory cracks. When asked, the FDA and the EPA both cited the other agency as having jurisdiction over tear gas manufacturing. This means that tear gas manufacturers are left to self-regulate, and any information we have about the chemicals is released at their whim. So how can we fix the problem of widespread tear gas use and the disproportionate use on social justice protesters? First, we can acknowledge the racist roots of these chemicals. We can ask federal agencies to stop playing hot potato with the responsibility of regulating tear gas manufacturing. We can ask local governments to limit the use of tear gas, ask for complete bans, or require the use of de-escalation techniques. We can impose penalties for officers who don't use tear gas correctly, and we can find alternate methods of crowd dispersal that don't amount to testing chemicals with unknown and potentially harmful lasting effects on protesters who are fighting for equal rights and racial justice. In conclusion, tear gas is used today because of the hidden history of its development, the policy that regulates it, and the misrepresented science public acceptance is based on. We should not continue to use a chemical that is banned in international conflict, is poorly studied, and is being used according to the desires of a white supremacist. Policy reform is in order. Thank you.